begins with denial, silent, insidious, and strangely comforting. He cannot accept the reality of your absence, so he rewrites the story in his mind. You are just upset, you need time, you are testing him. Any excuse will do as long as it spares him from facing the truth. At first he is confident, he believes you will come back because you always have. He assumes that a well-placed message, a memory carefully invoked, or the right mix of charm and guilt will undo what has been done. He scrolls through old conversations, searching for proof that your connection was too deep to break. In his mind you are still within reach, hovering just beyond the moment where things went wrong. Days pass, then weeks. Doubt begins to creep in, but he pushes it aside. He tells himself you are being stubborn, that your silence is a power play. He convinces himself that you are waiting for him to make the right move. So he waits too, expecting the moment when you will crack, when the absence will become too much for you to bear. But something is different this time. The usual patterns are not playing out as they should. You are not reacting, you are not watching, and worst of all, you seem fine. The realization unsettles him, but he still refuses to believe it. He reminds himself of all the times you have forgiven him before. He believes in the cycle of return, in the gravitational pull he once had over you. So he reaches out, not in a grand dramatic gesture, but in subtle ways. A message disguised as casual, a like on an old post, a song sent without explanation. He tells himself it is just a nudge, just enough to remind you, and when you do not respond, he tells himself you saw it, that you felt something, that you are resisting but not indifferent. The lies he tells himself are not malicious, they are survival, because to admit that you are truly gone is to step into a void he is not yet ready to face. The longer he clings to the illusion, the longer he can avoid the truth, that this time you are not coming back. At first the silence is just noise, an empty space he assumes will soon be filled, but as time stretches on, the silence does not just linger. It grows heavier. It follows him everywhere, an unshakable presence reminding him of what is missing. He tells himself that you are simply taking longer than usual, that your absence is temporary. He waits for the text, the call, the sign that you are still there, hovering on the edges of his world. But nothing comes. Doubt starts as a whisper, a nagging thought he pushes aside. He replays the last conversation, searching for a clue, a misstep, a word that could have turned the outcome in his favor. He convinces himself that there is still a window, still time to fix it. But when he reaches for you, through an old message, a shared memory, a lingering connection, there is no response. The realization creeps in, slow and unwelcome. His mind becomes a battlefield. One moment he is certain you are being distant on purpose, waiting for him to prove something. The next, a deeper fear sets in. What if this time is different? What if the silence is not a tactic but a decision? He refreshes his phone, scrolling through your past conversations as if searching for proof that you still exist in his life. He checks your social media, looking for traces of your emotions, for hints that you miss him too. But instead of finding comfort, he finds something worse. You are moving forward. The pain is not immediate, it builds in layers, subtle at first, then undeniable. He realizes that your absence is not a pause, but a shift. The spaces you once filled, his late-night thoughts, the inside jokes, the shared routines are now hollow. The weight of your absence presses down, no longer something he can ignore. He tells himself he still has time, but deep down he knows the truth. The longer he waits, the further you drift. Then a moment comes when he stops searching, stops expecting, stops lying to himself. And that is when the fear turns into something else. Loss. Real, irreversible loss. The silence is no longer a question of when you will return. It is the answer he has been avoiding all along. It happens in an instant, a sudden, gut-wrenching realization that no amount of denial, hope, or waiting can reverse. He is sitting alone, perhaps scrolling through old messages or staring at the empty space where your presence used to be, and then it hits him. You are not coming back. The weight of it is suffocating. His chest tightens, his breath catches, and for the first time he feels the full force of what he has lost. It is not just your absence that haunts him now, it is the permanence of it, the finality. There is no more reaching out, no more waiting for a sign, no more pretending that this is temporary. He thought he had time. He thought you would always be within reach. just one message, one apology, one right move away. But now, he knows, the door has closed and there is no way back in. Panic sets in first. His mind races through every mistake, every moment that led to this. He replays your last words, searching for something he missed, some hidden meaning that could give him a sliver of hope. But there is nothing left to decode. No secret message, no unresolved thread, just silence. Then comes the anger, not at you but at himself. He should have done more. He should have listened. He should have valued you before it was too late. He curses himself for every time he took you for granted, for every moment he assumed you would always be there. Regret, sharp and unforgiving, digs its claws into him. He wonders how he could have been so blind, so careless. And then, the worst part, acceptance. The moment he realizes there is nothing left to do, no second chance waiting in the wings. He can apologize 1,000 times, but you are not listening. He can craft the perfect words, but they will never reach you. He can feel the pain, drown in it, scream against it, but it changes nothing. He thought losing you would be a moment, a break, a shift in the tide. But now he understands this is not just a loss, this is an ending. And no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much he wishes he could undo it, he must face the truth. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. There is a unique kind of torment in realizing that no one is watching anymore. For so long, your presence had been an unspoken mirror, reflecting his choices back at him, shaping his actions, his words, his very sense of self. Whether he admitted it or not, he was performing, sometimes to impress, sometimes to manipulate, sometimes simply to keep you tethered to him. But now the stage is empty, the audience is gone, and he is left alone, exposed, with nothing but himself. At first, he still plays the role, crafting messages he never sends, imagining conversations that will never happen. He chooses his words carefully, just in case you are still paying attention from a distance. But the painful truth creeps in. There is no one left to notice. Your silence is not strategic. Your absence is not a waiting game. You have moved on, and that is a reality he is not prepared to accept. He checks his phone instinctively, waiting for the validation that used to be instant, a reaction, a response, any sign that he still holds space in your mind. But nothing comes. He posts something, perhaps a subtle nod to shared memories, a carefully curated moment designed to elicit a response, and yet nothing, no reply, no acknowledgement. You are not watching, you are not waiting. And suddenly he realizes that for the first time, his actions exist in a vacuum. The cruelest lessons are the ones that come too late. He sits with the weight of his choices, sifting through memories, finally seeing what he was too blind or too arrogant to recognize before. You were never his to control. Love was never about possession, nor was it something to be taken for granted. And yet he had treated it as if it were infinite, as if your presence was something guaranteed rather than something that needed to be nurtured. Now, stripped of illusion, he sees the truth with a clarity that is both enlightening and unbearable. Regret is a slow, creeping poison. It does not strike all at once. It builds in layers, each realization cutting deeper than the last. He sees now how he dismissed your words, how he failed to understand your silence, how he mistook patience for permanence. You had tried again and again to explain, to show him what you needed, to ask for the things you deserved, and he had heard you, but he had not listened. He had assumed you would always be there, that your love could endure neglect, that no matter how much distance grew between you, you would never truly leave. But love does not work that way. Love is not an object to be owned or a resource to be depleted. It thrives on presence, on effort, on a mutual willingness to cherish and protect. He had not protected it, and now, in its absence, he understands its value more than ever before. The worst part is knowing that he cannot undo it. The apologies that flood his mind, the gestures he now wishes he had made, the words he should have spoken, all of it is meaningless now. There will be no second chances, no redemption arc, no dramatic reconciliation. What is lost is lost. This understanding does not just hurt, it reshapes him. It forces him to confront the reality of his own flaws, his own failures, his own inability to give what was required when it mattered most. And though he may grow from it, though he may carry this lesson with him into every relationship that follows, it will never change the fact that he learned it, at your expense, and that will haunt him far longer than your absence ever could. There is a moment when the mind stops bargaining, when the denial, the anger, the regret, all of it gives way to something far worse: acceptance. Not the kind that brings peace, but the kind that burns, the kind that arrives like a final nail in the coffin, sealing a fate he never believed possible. You are not coming back. Not now, not ever. At first he fights it. He tells himself there must still be a way, that there is always a way if he can just find the right words, the right timing, the right excuse to reach out. Maybe, just maybe, you will reconsider. He replays old moments, clings to past tenderness, convinces himself that what you shared was too strong to simply disappear. But love does not vanish overnight. It erodes, slowly, quietly, until one day there is nothing left. And now, for the first time, he sees that the erosion is complete. The foundation has crumbled. There is nothing left to salvage. This realization does not come with a dramatic outburst. It comes in the quietest moments, when he wakes up and instinctively reaches for his phone, only to remember there is no message waiting. When he hears a song that once meant something and realizes it now belongs to the past. When he looks at his reflection and understands that he is no longer the person you loved, nor is he the person you would choose today. A different kind of pain sets in now. It is not the sharp sting of fresh loss, but the dull, relentless ache of knowing that some doors, once closed, never reopen. He had assumed, perhaps even relied on the idea, that he would always have access to you in some way, that even if you left, some part of you would still belong to him. But time has proven otherwise. You have not only left, you have let go. And there is nothing more final than that. It is in this moment that he truly understands what he has lost. Not just you, but the version of himself that existed when he was with you. The version that had a chance, the version that still mattered. And as much as he may try to rebuild, to change, to move forward, he knows one thing with absolute certainty: he will never be the same again.